A chill wind is blowing through America's industrial heartland, and it's not just the cold air sweeping across the Great Lakes. There's a sense of unease settling over the factories and towns that have long been the backbone of the nation's economy. The source of this anxiety isn't the weather, but a storm brewing in Washington, a political tempest that threatens to upend lives and livelihoods across the Midwest. President Trump has reignited his trade war, imposing a sweeping 25% tariff on all vehicles and auto parts from Canada and Mexico. The move is bold, dramatic, and has sent shockwaves through the auto industry, which relies on a tightly woven web of cross-border supply chains. This isn't just another negotiating tactic or a bluff at the bargaining table. It's a seismic shift that shattered decades of cross-border cooperation in the auto industry. Assembly lines that once hummed with activity are now eerily silent, and the flow of parts and vehicles has slowed to a crawl. Factories and communities in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana are gripped by anxiety. Workers who once felt secure in their jobs now face the prospect of layoffs, and small towns that depend on the auto industry are bracing for tough times ahead. The Auto Belt's lifeblood, its jobs, schools, and small businesses, now hangs in the balance. Every paycheck, every classroom, every local diner is touched by the uncertainty, as families wonder what tomorrow will bring. Trump's rhetoric promises to protect American jobs, but the reality on the ground is chaos. Costs are soaring for manufacturers and consumers alike, and the future is more uncertain than ever. Local business owners worry about keeping their doors open, while families struggle to make ends meet. The North American auto ecosystem, once seamless and efficient, is now fractured. Supply chains that span borders have been disrupted, leaving warehouses empty and assembly lines waiting for parts that may never arrive. As the industry braces for impact, the only question is how much damage this storm will leave behind. Will the heartland recover, or will these communities be changed forever? The heartland waits, uneasy, for the fallout, hoping for relief, but preparing for the worst as uncertainty hangs heavy in the air. Trump's tariffs have upended the economics of car manufacturing overnight. A 25% levy now hits every vehicle and part imported from Canada and Mexico, bypassing the continent's trade pact. Even made in the USA cars are more expensive, as their parts cross borders multiple times. Analysts warn the tariffs could wipe out profits for GM, Ford, and Stellantis. Sticker prices are set to jump by thousands, up to $8,000 for US-built cars, and as much as $15,000 for imports. Automakers face a brutal choice: absorb the costs and risk bankruptcy, or pass them to consumers and watch sales collapse. The policy meant to protect American industry is squeezing it to the breaking point. The new math of car making is simple: higher costs, fewer sales, and a looming crisis. For Detroit's big three automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, the new tariffs are more than just a policy change. They represent an existential threat to the very foundation of their business. These companies have shaped the American auto industry for over a century, but now, they're facing a challenge unlike any before. GM is especially vulnerable, with its top-selling models like the Silverado and Equinox built in Mexico and Canada, now hit with the full force of the new tariffs. These vehicles, once a symbol of cross-border efficiency, have suddenly become much more expensive to bring into the US market. The impact was immediate. GM's stock plunged, and CEO Mary Barra has publicly admitted that the company can only absorb so much of these new costs before drastic cuts, like layoffs or plant closures, become unavoidable. The pressure is mounting with every passing day. Ford and Stellantis are in the same bind. They're scrambling to stockpile vehicles, cut costs, and find creative ways to keep their operations afloat. But everyone knows these are only temporary fixes. The uncertainty is rippling through every level of their organizations. For decades, the big three have relied on a business model built on cross-border efficiency, shipping parts and vehicles seamlessly between the US, Mexico, and Canada. Now, that very model has become a liability, threatening their ability to compete. Margins in the auto industry are already razor-thin, and these tariffs represent a multi-billion-dollar blow. Every extra dollar spent on tariffs is a dollar that can't go toward innovation, wages, or keeping factories open. Unlike tech giants flush with cash, automakers don't have deep reserves to weather this kind of storm. Their survival depends on volume, efficiency, and tight cost controls, now all under threat. And the industry is already strained by the costly shift to electric vehicles. Billions are being invested in new technology, factories, and worker training, leaving little room for unexpected shocks. Now, Detroit's survival is on the line. The city's identity, its jobs, and its future are all tied to the fate of these companies. The stakes couldn't be higher. The big three are fighting for their future, determined to adapt and survive, but the road ahead has never looked more uncertain. While Detroit reels, Tesla stands apart. With most of its cars built in California and Texas, Tesla is largely shielded from the tariffs. Its limited reliance on cross-border parts gives it a huge edge. As rivals' stocks tumble, Tesla's rises. Elon Musk touts his cars as the most American-made. The tariffs hand Tesla a competitive advantage, but there's more. Canada's aggressive EV mandate forces other automakers to buy regulatory credits from Tesla, padding its profits. In just one quarter, Tesla made over $400 million from these credits, much of it thanks to Canadian rules. Trump's tariffs and Canada's climate policy have created a perfect storm. Tesla wins on both fronts. While others scramble, Tesla's position only grows stronger. Canada's new EV mandate adds fuel to the fire. By 2026, 20% of new cars sold in Canada must be electric, a target far above current sales. Automakers who miss the mark must buy credits from companies like Tesla. Trump sees the policy as an unfair trade barrier and is pressuring Canada to drop it. For GM, Ford, and Stellantis, the options are restrict sales of profitable gas vehicles or pay millions to Tesla. The Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association warns the mandate could force Detroit's automakers out of Canada. Combined with U.S. tariffs, the policy creates a toxic environment for traditional car makers. Canada's green ambitions are colliding with harsh economic realities. The industry is caught in a crossfire of trade and climate policy. The tariffs strike at the heart of the auto industry, its complex cross-border supply chain. This network is the backbone of modern car manufacturing, connecting thousands of suppliers, factories, and workers across 3 nations. Every day, millions of parts crisscross borders, each piece essential to keeping assembly lines moving and workers employed. For decades, parts and vehicles have flowed seamlessly across North America. The system was so efficient that a single car might contain components from a dozen different states, provinces, and countries, all coming together just in time for final assembly. This integration has made North American cars competitive on the global stage. Now, a 25% tariff gums up the works, causing delays and driving up costs at every step. Shipments are held up at borders, paperwork piles up, and uncertainty ripples through every link in the chain. Even a small delay in one part can halt entire production lines, leaving workers idle and factories silent. 1 in 4 cars sold in the US is built in Canada or Mexico, but even US-assembled cars rely on imported parts. From engines to electronics, these components are sourced globally, making tariffs a tax on nearly every vehicle, no matter where it's assembled. The idea of quickly reshoring production is a fantasy. Building new factories takes years and billions. Even if companies wanted to move operations overnight, the reality is that skilled labor, specialized equipment, and established supplier relationships can't be replicated with the flip of a switch. Automakers are trapped. They can't move production overnight, so they pay the tariffs and raise prices. Consumers feel the pinch as new car prices climb higher, putting vehicles out of reach for many families. The entire industry is forced to make tough choices, balancing survival with competitiveness. Higher prices mean fewer sales, leading to layoffs and plant closures on both sides of the border. Communities that once thrived on auto jobs now face uncertainty, as the ripple effects spread far beyond the factory floor. The tariffs, meant to protect jobs, risk unraveling the entire North American auto ecosystem. Instead of safeguarding employment, they threaten to dismantle decades of cooperation and shared prosperity. The supply chain is buckling under the strain, and the future of the industry hangs in the balance. As uncertainty grows, so does the risk to workers, businesses, and consumers across the continent. In a twist, the United Auto Workers Union backs Trump's tariffs. UAW President Shawn Fain calls them a necessary step to end decades of job losses to Mexico. The union hopes short-term pain will bring long-term gains in U.S. jobs and investment. But the gamble is risky. If the tariffs cripple Detroit's automakers, UAW members could face layoffs. It's a precarious balancing act, supporting a policy that could backfire on their own members. Under Fain, the UAW is betting big on economic nationalism, even if it means siding with Trump. The union's message is clear. American jobs come first, no matter the political cost. It's a high-stakes move in a high-stakes moment. Behind the scenes, frantic negotiations are underway to defuse the crisis. US, Canadian, and Mexican officials are seeking a deal that lets Trump claim victory while sparing the auto industry. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick hints at a possible compromise: lower tariffs, in exchange for concessions on investment, and Canada's EV mandate. For Canada and Mexico, the stakes are huge. Their economies depend on US trade. Prime Minister Carney must protect Canadian industry without abandoning climate goals. Automakers are lobbying hard, warning that every day of tariffs tightens the economic noose. Even if a deal is reached, the damage is done. Investment is frozen, and trust is shaken. The clock is ticking for a diplomatic solution. As autumn 2025 arrives, the auto industry stands at a crossroads. If a deal is struck and tariffs are eased, recovery is possible, but scars will remain. If not, the industry faces a painful restructuring, plant closures, job losses, and chaos across North America. Tesla looks set to thrive, while traditional automakers fight for survival, squeezed by tariffs and climate mandates. The crisis exposes the clash between globalization and economic nationalism. The old consensus, free trade and integrated supply chains, has been shattered. The future of America's auto heartland hangs in the balance. Will this be a temporary disruption or the start of a permanent decline? The answer remains uncertain.